Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1173. I apologize for being late. I was researching. I admit it. I'm a researchaholic when it comes to genealogy. I'm a genealogy. It's just what I love to do. So tonight is all about uncovering surprises. So when researching your family tree, what surprises have you uncovered? What details have you uncovered that nobody in the family knew about? What stories have you uncovered? It's always interesting to find those stories and relay them to everybody else and go, wow, I didn't know about it. And have them go, oh my gosh, I didn't know about it. No, that can't be right. Some stories are good, some not so good. Some is a little like, I'm not quite sure which way I want to, what my opinion on that one is. But you can find some amazing stories, and they could be found in all sorts of places based on where you're looking and researching and all of that. Got to do a great ton of research for a client yesterday. It was awesome. And I sent her a message today going, did you know that your grandfather was served in blah, 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 blah? And she comes back and goes, nope. And so it was, and I said, oh, then you won't know about his head injury from a gunshot wound in the war. And she's like, what? Didn't know anything about that, but it explains a lot. Things like that. I have also had clients where they gave me all the information, everything, and I started the research and then came across the Social Security. I got to talk about the Social Security records because they can be very interesting and they can reveal a lot. I had one case where I was researching and had all the information fitted, everything, the name, the dates, the places, everything worked out perfectly. Now, when you're looking at the Social Security Index, you actually have two sets of records. There's a Social Security Death Index, which basically shows this is who they were, this is when the Social Security number was issued, unless it was before 1951, and it will have issued before 1951 written on there. And then after that, they put the date it was issued. I think it was 1951, was it 1955? It was 1950 something. Pretty sure it was 1951. Now I'm questioning my own abilities here. And it will have the date they died and their last known address. If you go over to the applications and claims Social Security, and if you go over to the Social Security number applications and claims, you get a lot more detail in there. You get who the mother is, who the mother, what their maiden name, if it's known, the father's name, where they were born. What else is on that one? You can get a lot of it. Oh, and if they change their name at any point in time. And so I had this one that I couldn't find the birth records, could not find the birth records. We definitely had the death date. They gave me a copy of the death certificate so I could research everything. And so on there was the birth date, where he was born, and everything, the parents' names were on there and everything else. So I started researching and I came across the Social Security applications and claims. And I looked at that record and went, oh, how am I going to tell them this? And it turned out, like I said, they give me a copy of the death certificate. So I had the people's names on there, the parents' names on there, the birth date, the death date, everything matched up except the name. Like everything matched up except the name, the actual original name on there. But down below in the bottom it says name changed on this date, name changed on this date, name changed on this date, and it shows you what the name is. And it could be that they were born a Robert, but they've been known as Bob. It could be that they go by their middle name instead of their first name. Quite often, the most common one that we see is a John Michael, usually goes by Mike instead of John. Don't ask me why. But that's a lot of cases when I'm researching genealogy. If I see a John Michael, I start looking under Michael, only because most of the cases where I have either met in person or researched, the John Michael, in most cases, goes by Michael instead of John. Don't know why. Don't know. Can't explain it. But that is what I found. So when I come across a John Michael, I always start adding Michael into this research as well, and dropping the John. And quite often I find the people that way. But I had this one, and the name came up on the top. But when I looked at the name changes down below, he was actually born with a completely different name. We're talking first name, middle name, last name, completely different. Actually, no, the middle name was still the same. So his first name and his last name were completely different. And so when I went and had a look for the birth records for that, I found the birth records. So somewhere along the way, this person had changed their name to what the great-grandchildren, the grandchildren, and so from the children to the grandchildren to the great-grandchildren all knew this person under this name. His actual birth records was this name over here, with some similarities, like the middle names were the same, but children and grandchildren, not great-grandchildren, just children and grandchildren always known him by a particular name. And so I'm like, and you kind of get that little dilemma of, do I tell them? Do I not tell them? There was rumors that this had happened, but they weren't sure. Did they really want to know? Well, some did, some didn't. And so for those that did, I said to them, look, I found this record. This is what I found. This is what it shows. To verify the information and because everything was lining up, everything was all in place. I had dotted my I's and crossed my T's. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes I go dot the T's and cross the I's. And this is what I found. And I went and I found the birth record of this person, which matches up with the mother's name, but the father's name is completely different. But she did get married to the other person that is listed on this form. And they're like, that's interesting. And I says, yeah. I said, I wasn't sure if I should tell you or not, but you wanted to know, so I'm telling you, and then you can let those in the family that want to know this as well. But I know that there's some in your family that don't want to know. And they were like, yeah. There's some people that just don't want to believe that something like this happened. And I said, but I'm not sure why. I said, here's the mother that was listed on the birth certificate. Here's your grandfather. Here's your grandfather here. Here's what he was born as. Here is who his parents were. You can see the mother's same, different father. And then he died. The birth father died, and then she got remarried. And then she got divorced, and then she got married to the last person who is named as the father on the Social Security index thing. And they were like, wonder why he put him down as his father. I says, I don't know. But here's his name changes. And she's like, that's interesting, because he had changed his last name to the name of the third husband of his mother. And that's what he was always known as. Different first name, different last name, middle name the same, all the other details matched up, and we were able to solve that particular portion of that puzzle because we were able to find other records that supported this document, that supported all of this, and showed us that this was definitely the right person. So you come across some very interesting surprises. Other surprises that you will come, which is a very common one. People think that it's really this one just cracks me up. So when you think of back in the 1800s and you think of children out of wedlock, you're sort of like, that was so frowned upon. Do you know how often it happened? It happened a lot. There was a lot of times where the parents got married and the firstborn was born, a few months later. Like there was no way that was a honeymoon baby. It happened a lot. There are records out there where you've got here's the couple, here's their marriage certificate and everything else. Then you go to the baptismal. The baptism was done a few months later, and you might find the birth registration in the parish records as well. And you do the math and you go, yeah, that baby wouldn't have survived if it was born at 4 months old. Born 4 or 5 months after the wedding, and it was. I mean, at first I thought, oh. they had children out of wedlock in the 1800s. But the more I got it, and this was right back when I was first studying to research genealogy, but the more I got into it and the more I was helping other people out with their trees, and even in my own family tree, the number of times where a baby was born before the couple got married or after the immediate, not long after the couple got married, it was in there a lot. And I'm like, wow. These are not the type of stories that you hear about people in the 1800s, but there were a lot of illegitimate children born. And in some places on the birth certificate, if the mother was unmarried at the time when the baby was born, the father was not listed on the birth certificate. So if you come across if you're looking for somebody in your family tree and you come across a birth certificate and there's just the mother's name and no father's name, it could check the rules that were for that particular area at that particular time, because it could be that the reason the father is not listed is because they were unmarried at the time. And you can go and verify that when you go find the marriage records, because 9 times out of 10, the couple ended up getting married and you see that, they had the child before they got married. So it's just kind of interesting, some of the surprises that come up and some of the things that come up. And so, yes, that could very well be the birth certificate you're looking for, but her husband's name is not on there, even though he is the father, because they were unmarried when the baby was born. So, and some people would lie and say, yes, this is my wife, this is my husband, just so that make sure that the father was on there. Because on the birth certificate, it didn't ask when they were married. It just had their names written on there. Death certificates are another one where you can come across some surprises as well. There are some death certificates out there where now the information is all supplied by who they call the informant, which could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a friend, it could be another relative. So you're very reliant on the person who is providing the information. And in some cases, they will ask for the death certificate. They will ask how many living children you have, or how many children did this woman have and how many are still alive. So you can find out that there may have been more children in the family than you originally thought, because you didn't know that they lost a child when it was an infant or lost a child when it was young. And you've only ever known the family to have 4 children, and there could have actually been 6. And it could have been that one died at birth or one died later on in life, before they got to their teenage years or something like that. So that's always a surprise as well. And then sometimes, I have come across this one, they had 4 children listed, and yet the family only consisted of 3. And it's like, well, who's this 4th person? Because all they did was list the ages. They just listed the ages. And they said, we're trying to find out who this 4th person is. And I says, okay, let's go looking. I says, who are the other 3 ages here? And they said, well, this is me, this is my brother, this is my sister. So these are us 3, but who's this one that's older than us? And do we have a sibling out there that we don't know about? And sure enough, whoever the informant was knew of the 4th child that had been born before this person had gotten married. And then this person had actually put the baby up for adoption, no, it was an in-family adoption. So that baby was actually taken care of by another family member and brought up as their own child. So we found out that this person they thought was always their cousin was actually the sibling, the half sibling. And so you find out these sorts of surprises on death certificates as well. Like I said, it all depends on who the informant is. And those are some of the mysteries that we can uncover. Other things that can be uncovered on death certificates is how the person died. That they may think, oh, how did that, you get the death certificate, it's got cause of death. And it could be anything. And they will list the illnesses, they'll list the injuries, and, were they in a car accident? Were they murdered? Gunshot wounds, arrows, knives, drownings, all sorts of things. And sometimes people don't know how their ancestors died or members in the family passed away until they see the death certificates. And one of them we came across, it had hanging. So we went and we digged a little deeper, and we're like, is this actually the right person? So we did all the research around it, because this one said the person died by hanging. And we're like, was this a criminal offense or was it self-taken? And so it was sort of like a real dilemma at that point. So we started researching, and it turned out this person was actually hanged for a crime they committed. And they were found guilty of a particular crime, and they were hung. And the family had no idea about the story. And so when we come across stuff like this, we go as deep as we possibly can. We research everything as much as we can. We're going through county records, we're going through sheriff records, we're going through the criminal records, we're going through anything of legality that could surround this. If we can find a coroner's report, we'll look at that. It may be mentioned on the probate. It could be mentioned, there could be court documents there'll be court document if it's a hanging by trial, which is when they were found guilty of something. Then we go in and we're looking for court records. Are the court records available? If not, where can we go and look up those court records? Some of them you can only see the physical copy and you've got to go to the location to see that, or you get on the phone with a fellow genealogist and say, hey, can you go check this out for me? Or you call the place where the records are held and said, I'm looking for information on this, and if they're able to copy it and send it to you, they will do that. But if it's ones where you've got to put the eyeballs on the actual document there in the place because they're not allowed to copy it for copyright things, then we get that as well. We're looking through old newspapers around that time, what happened, and it's kind of interesting all the different stories you come up with. So then it's sort of like, okay, we've verified that this person was hung because they were guilty of this particular crime. Is this the person that actually fits into their tree? And so then we're doing all the other research to make sure that we have the right person that fits into this tree before we tell the clients, oh yeah, that great-great-grandfather of yours that you were asking about? Yeah, he was found guilty of this and he got hung. Before you give them any of the documentation. So we try to make the hard part is that there are some things that when you're talking with the client, you can tell how much it means to them to find this information. And they're very reluctant to mention any. And I says, now, is there any family stories surrounding this person that you know of that could help us in our search? And some of them are a little hesitant to mention things, but other ones are going, yeah, we heard this rumor that, he was involved in something that was going on, or she was involved in something. I said, okay, that's fine. We can look it up and see if it's actually there and that sort of stuff. Then based on the conversation you're having with them, when they're very, very hesitant, it's like they don't want to mention it because either they don't want, and I says, now, do you want, if we find it's confirmed, do you want to know? So we do ask those sort of questions as well. And sometimes they're a little like, oh, I'm not sure if I do. And I says, well, let me look to see what I can find, and I'll find the information, and then I can tell you that, yes, we have confirmed that story, or no, that story is not is false. And then if we confirm it, then you can ask if you want to see the details. How about that? And it's like, okay. And other ones are sort of like, oh, I'm not sure. That they just don't want to know. And it's like, no, don't want to know about that. But of course, we have to, when we're researching, we come across these stories. So we have to dig because there's further information that you can find in different records and things. I've got this one at the moment, the one I was working on yesterday, and we didn't know much about his family. We only had in his marriage records the names of his parents. And that was it. We had nothing about siblings or anything else. Then I happened to find his military records, and in his military records, his next of kin was his sister, who was married. So it was like, yes! Oh my gosh, we got a family member! Yay! And whenever we have a breakthrough like that, we get up, we do a little celebration dance because it's meant like, yes, found another piece of the puzzle, yay! No matter what the puzzle is, it could be, like we said, finding the death certificate of this particular person. We still did a celebration dance because we'd finally found a piece of the puzzle we've been looking for. When we confirmed all the details and everything else, we did another celebration dance because, yes, we had a definite piece of the puzzle. When there was another case where we couldn't confirm it, no matter, we exhausted all research possibilities on it, every record that we had looked at and everything else, we could not confirm or deny this rumor. Actually, no, we couldn't confirm the rumor because we couldn't find anything to support it. So there's cases that we've come across like that as well. This is, this person served and blah, 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 blah. So we've gone and we've searched all the military records out there. It was in a time that because the military records are in, no, hang on, no, different military. What were they? They were British military. So we went through the records that we were able to obtain from there, and nope, no record of that person ever serving, because they said, oh, and they won this medal and that medal. Well, when you have medal recipients, you can find those records, and we could find nothing about this person ever being in that military, ever serving in that military, never having received those medals or anything else. And so it's like, they're very proud of this person having this military service and these medals and all that. Do we really want to tell them that it's not true? Those are the other hard stories as well. So there's a lot of surprises that can happen. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. I always knew my great uncle was not a nice person. Somehow, all the other members of the family. Back to here. Hey, I'm back. I'm sorry. My internet crashed on me, so I just switched over to my phone. I apologize for that. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here because I got a DOG that's giving me the eyes as they say, come on. But when you're researching genealogy and family history, be prepared that there are going to be surprises. Some of them you're going to like, and some of them you're going to be like, oh my God, that's in my tree. Everybody's going to have really great people in their tree, and there's going to be some black sheep in the family. I don't know. I have not researched a family tree yet where there has not been any black sheep in the family. And you can usually tell which ones they are because the people who are part of the tree that are never mentioned. And you will have families when you come around and say, hey, I'm looking on the census report, and this census report said that, that grandma, that our great grandparents had 5 kids. Nope, they only had 4. Well, who's this person? We don't talk about that person. They've basically disowned that person, even though they are there on official records and everything else. So there are times when family will talk about members, and those they don't talk about, it's quite often that person did something that the family didn't like, so the family disowned them, and they were not allowed to mention their name at all. Yet you will discover them through the family tree, on census reports, on death records, birth records, all sorts of records. You'll come across this name, you're like, who is this person? And you'll start researching and go, well, they're part of the family. And when you start asking members of the family about that person, they'll go, nope, we're not allowed to talk about that person. Or they will indicate in some way that that person is the black sheep of the family and they have been disowned by the family. So you'll get some stories like that too. And I've got a couple of those in my tree as well. But anyway, so always look for, always be prepared for surprises, good or bad, are going to show up when you're researching. People who you thought were under one name could be under another name. I've got one somewhere in my tree, and the only way I know that I'm connected to this person is through the DNA matching. And I had this and I reached out to this person who had this DNA matching. So I'm trying to figure out where in the tree. Well, we actually come down through this portion of the tree here. And she says, but I don't know what my father's actual name is. And I'm like, why is that? And she said, he kept changing it. He said at one point it was this, and then he took my mother's maiden name and put that as his last name. And then he went and got married to this person over here while he was still married to my mother. And then he changed his name completely and got married to another person while he was still married to the other two. And I got this whole story of this guy who kept changing his name, disappearing, popping up again, remarried to somebody else, never divorcing any of the previous women, but always under a different name. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So she was trying to unravel her father, the mystery of her father, and we joined forces and started researching records and coming across all sorts of wonderful things. And well, I call them wonderful things because we're coming across all sorts of amazing stories and all of that sort of stuff that I was sort of like, you can't write this fiction. You just can't. That's why Mark Twain always says that truth is stranger than fiction, because fiction has to make sense. You cannot write these as novels. This is actual life, and this was this guy's actual story. We were able to follow him through newspaper articles, through marriage records, trying different name combinations and coming up with this guy. We could never find birth certificates for the names he used because he had made the names up or used somebody else's name. And yeah, he was a piece of work, that one. But anyway, be prepared for surprises. And when you're doing your research genealogy, when you do come across a surprise, before you go to the family and go, oh, you're not going to believe what I found. Verify the information first. Make sure, research the heck out of the information that you've got there. Find other things that can collaborate with that can support that, before you go bursting forth to the family and going, oh, blah, 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 because it could be somebody who has the exact same name as somebody in your family, but on a completely different part of the tree. That has happened too. So I was looking at it thinking, oh my God, what's going on here? And when I got in and started researching, I realized it wasn't in my direct line. It was actually on one of the sidelines of the tree. So it's like, whew. But you'll come across all sorts of stories, and those make telling the genealogy stories really fun. And you get all sorts of weird and wonderful things happening. Anyway, I'm out of here. Have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. We'll catch you guys back here at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Hei konera.